Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 215, Iron Fingers. Hassan stood in the vast wilderness and watched the girl leap off the horse a short distance away. Without even removing his scimitar, he spread his arms open to catch that beautiful red figure pouncing towards him in a steady grip. Duo Erlin gasped softly, her red skirt fluttering as she was spun around, her laughter, clear and melodious. "May the gods bless my heroic eagle." Hassan hugged his newlywed wife with a slight blush on his face. He brushed away the snow off Duo Erlin and responded, "And may the gods bless my Duo Erlin." Hassan had only just gotten married at the beginning of the year, a marriage bestowed upon him by Amuir. His beloved Duo Erlin was a girl from the Hulu tribe deep in the desert. She wore a gingerbread pleated skirt, and was as beautiful as the morning dew on the shores of Lake Chidi. She was the most intense filly of the 12 tribes. Hassan was head over heels in love with her. Duo Erlin scrutinized Hassan. "Bayan broke his promise to me. You've lost weight." Hassan laughed in spite of himself. "He can't always stay by my side." "Then he shouldn't have promised me." Duo Erlin landed on the ground and took Hassan's hands. "I brought fresh goat's milk." "It's too far." As Hassan was led away by Duo Erlin, he gazed at her. "Let Chagan do all this work next time." Hassan rested for a mere 2 days after his marriage before returning to the battle zone. It was hard for Duo Erlin to see him, and she could only depend on the opportunities to deliver supplies to meet him here. She happily showed Hassan the food she brought along, and Hassan gobbled up the flatbread she made with her own hands. "I want to come here and see you." Duo Erlin sat on the sack and watched Hassan eat. "I miss you so much, just like the morning dew misses the sun." "Will you go back when the snow melts?" Hassan took a sip of the icy cold milk and met Duo Erlin's eyes. The color of her pupils was a light shade of green. Each time Hassan gazed into them, it was like gazing into the clear, shimmering waters of Lake Chidi. He would think of everything wonderful, which made it impossible for him to say no to Duo Erlin. He lovingly caressed Duo Erlin's cheeks and answered, "If the war ends." "You avenged Qiang Hazi. Father is grateful to you. You're not only the hero of the Hanshi tribe, but also the hero of the Hulu tribe." Duo Erlin cupped his face. "The heroic eagle shall fly across the Hanjian mountains. I'll always be waiting for you at Lake Chidi." The heroic eagle that Duo Erlin spoke of was more like a term of endearment. In the entire desert, only she and Hassan's mother could call him that, for Hassan would get shy. Qiang Hazi was Duo Erlin's elder brother. He was also Hassan's brother that Xiao Fangxia killed. The wind in the wilderness was too cold. After Hassan finished his milk, he brought Duo Erlin back to the camp. A fire was burning in the military tent, and it was here that Duo Erlin steeped milk tea for Hassan. They both liked unrefined tea. If the Huiyan tribe was still around, Duo Erlin sipped her milk tea. "We would have a never-ending supply of tea to drink in winter." Hassan had just finished slicing the roast meat for her and was in the midst of wiping his dagger. With a serious expression, he answered, "They will come back." Duo Erlin would be leaving with the squad escorting the supplies tomorrow, so Hassan did not stay with the soldiers tonight. As briefly separated newlyweds who just reunited only to part again soon, they retired for rest very early. Snow suddenly fell in the middle of the night. Hassan was sleeping soundly when he suddenly heard the call outside the tent. He got up carefully, put on his robe, and stepped out. Snow lunged full on at Hassan as soon as the tent flap was lifted. With his hair loose around his shoulders, he patted his robe as he asked the soldier before him, "What's wrong?" "Bayan is back." Hassan turned his head over and saw the remaining cavalry. Bayan, who had been galloping on the road for days, rolled off his horse and landed on the snow-covered ground with his legs gone weak. Refusing support, he first snatched the water canteen at the side and tilted his head back to gulp the water down. It was only after the front of his robe was drenched that he appeared to have caught his breath. "What happened?" Hassan picked up Bayan's scimitar, then looked at Bayan again with a slightly heavy expression as he said with certainty, "Achi has been defeated." Bayan rubbed his frozen cheeks and exhaled deeply. He cut an extremely sorry figure, with both his legs covered in mud. He tossed the canteen back into the arms of someone beside him, looking particularly haggard as he stood before Hassan. "Xiao Qi lured us on the frozen river to Hashi sinkhole. It was there where he killed Achi." As he spoke, he reached out to tug hard at the left side of the horse saddle. Achi's head tumbled off in response and bumped into Hassan's foot face down. "Xiao Qi, let me go." Bayan's voice trembled as he said with lips blue with the cold. "He had me bring this back." Hassan gradually pursed his lips into a grim line. It's a warning sign of his looming fury. He looked at Achi's head, and fire blazed in his eyes again. There was dead silence all around, with only the gale continuing on with its rampage. The chill Hassan inhaled swiftly coursed through his limbs. He turned his gaze away and looked into the far distance, where the snowflakes danced. Duan province has been taken over by the pack of wolves. They're making peace and colluding with the fox from Zongbo. Harigo is there, too. He has become Xiao Qi's slave. The jut in Bayan's throat bobbed as he recollected the terror of being pursued by the Libe armored cavalry that day. He continued in a hoarse voice, "Xiao Qi has gotten his hands on a new blade, and the scorpions have become weeds in the Gobi desert in the face of his Libe armored cavalry. Hassan, the hammers can't hold him back. That's no longer Xiao Fangxiu's armored cavalry. That has long since ceased to be Xiao Fangxiu's armored cavalry." Hassan abruptly turned his gaze back and took a step closer towards Bayan. "The pack of wolves needs a new alpha wolf, a new king of wolves. Xiao Jiming will deploy him back to the north, and I will be here waiting for him and his new blade." A sound suddenly rang out behind him. Duo Erlin stood at the entrance of the tent, watching them worriedly. Hassan curbed his fury and turned back to look at Duo Erlin, but did not smile. He should have killed Xiao Qi yet. Hassan thought once again. Back during that autumnal rain hunt, he should have killed Xiao Qi yet. ******. The courtyard was silent in the middle of the night. Xiao Qi had just finished washing up and was rummaging through the small box by the candlelight, picking pearls and jade. Shenzequan's folding fan was resting on the edge of the table, its owner was still soaking in the bath. "The horses will arrive at Mount Luo in a few days." Xiao Qi picked out the agate he had placed inside yesterday and said to Shenzequan, who was behind the screen, "Are you going with me for a look?" Shenzequan was exhausted these few days. Even though he did not fall sick again, he had also never touched Yangshan Shui again. Soaking in the water, he said, "Going to Mount Luo is a must. It's also more convenient for you to return to Libe from there." The days were passing too quickly. Shenzequan merely had a few rounds of discussions and it was already the end of the second month. Tilting his head back, he closed his eyes in contemplation. The curve of his neck was beautiful, its luster smooth and luminous bathed under the dim light filtered through the screen. "Has the candidate for the secretary of Duan province been picked?" Xiao Qi turned the orb of agate between his fingers as he casually asked. "Yes," Shenzequan said, "a talent." Xiao Qi looked over and offered, "Kong Chengfeng." Shenzequan raised his dripping wet arm to prop his head against it. He cast a sidelong glance at Xiao Qi's shadow and responded, "Nope, guess again. Yuan Zhou has limited mobility and isn't suitable." Xiao Qi genuinely could not think of anyone else. Who else could there be? Shenzequan got to his feet and wiped himself dry with a towel at the side. Xiao Qi did not look in his direction. Shenzequan brought the washed blue handkerchief to the tip of his nose and sniffed it lightly. He answered, "Shen Lanzhou, of course." The thickest wall of all of Zongbo was going to be built in Duan province, and Shenzequan did not feel all that assured to hand the job over to anyone else given the connection between Mount Luo and Libe. He had to stay here and build up this wall with his own hands. Moreover, by heading south from Duan province, he could also directly bypass Tianfei Watchtower to arrive at the Bianjun Commandery. Shenzhen found this location to be excellent. By establishing a reserve depot here that was comparable to Tse province, he would be able to provide reinforcements to both the northern and southern battlefields in the future. Do you still remember the steel needle? Shenzhen put the handkerchief back, his fingertips lingering, reluctant as they were to part with it. He continued, Qiao Tianya is the most suitable candidate to lead this, but he presently has to take care of Yuanzhou and is unable to leave Tse province. But if I were to use Fei Sheng, this place is so far from the reach of the central administration that I don't feel at ease leaving him here without anyone to keep him in check. The steel needle referred to the light cavalry, one that would be deployed to the banks of Hashi River as Shenzhen's eyes and ears. They would also stay at Aduan province that could go on to become the central hub of both places. Whoever would be the commander-in-chief of this place would be a key official concurrently in charge of both military and governmental affairs. He would also have money coming and going under his hand when the Yan clan's business expanded over after spring, and Yan Hiru was not an honest man. Shenzhen did not really have much to fault Fei Sheng on, but he had to assess in his heart just how long Fei Sheng's loyalty would endure. He could not gamble it all on the words share will and woe, through thick and thin. Never mind if it was just for a year or two. But once Fei Sheng had been stationed here for a long time, he would have gotten a taste of the benefits that came with the convergence of the north and south. With this steel needle in his hand and with Yan Hiru on the sidelines doing his utmost to butter him up, how much of today's master-servant bond through their shared tribulations of life and death would remain? By then, Shenzhen would no longer be the sole party Fei Sheng could fall back on. As long as Fei Sheng had so much as an ounce of inclination, he was dangerous. In this world, authority was not something that could be bestowed on its own. Qi Huilian had long warned Shenzhen before, the cornerstone of the art of governance and rulership was checks and balances. Leading a group of outstanding men was akin to overlooking a game match. One should never be biased for private, selfish reasons. Why did Huo Lingyun have to be placed in the Jinyi Wei? It was precisely to fill out the position left by Qiao Tianya. He posed a threat to Fei Sheng and could make the latter knock senses into himself and draw a line in the sand. Similarly, why did Yao Wenyu offer up this suggestion? It was meant to push Qiao Tianya back into the game and remind him that Shenzhen was lacking subordinates and so, Qiao Tianya was indispensable. If Fei Sheng wanted to advance a step further, Shenzhen had to deliberate his moves carefully. In other words, as long as Fei Sheng was promoted up a level, Qiao Tianya would also be discreetly promoted in the same manner. He was the chain that held Fei Sheng in check. Shenzhen would never allow Fei Sheng to surpass Qiao Tianya and hold sole authority in his hand. Fei Sheng had said to Qiao Tianya that in Shenzhen's eyes, the latter was the most suitable candidate to be deployed to command the light cavalry in Duan province. This was because everyone mutually understood one another. Qiao Tianya was a sentimental man who placed importance on relationships. This was both Qiao Tianya's strength but also his weakness. Shenzhen slipped on his robe and stepped out from behind the screen. Xiao Qiye was sitting at the edge of the desk with his long legs all stretched out. Upon hearing footsteps, he clenched his fist and hid away that agate gem, then looked at Shenzhen and said, "Then I just so happen to have something to tell you." Shenzhen's belt was tied rather loosely. When he stepped over the rug, the solace of his feet felt a little ticklish. With his collarbone exposed, he sipped on his tea and nodded at Xiao Qiye to motion for him to continue. Xiao Qiye then said, "The Biancha ponies that we've seized this time will also be placed at Mount Luo. You want a light cavalry, so give these ponies a try. They are swifter than the battle steeds of Libei, and they have great endurance and stamina in the Gobi Desert." Shenzhen held the teacup with both hands and thought about it for a moment. Libei can't use these ponies anyway. Our battle steeds are all specifically born and bred on the Hanjian mountains for the armored cavalry. It took several generations to produce the exceptional horses of today that are able to bear the weight of heavy armor. Xiao Qiye spread his legs apart so that Shen Zequin could stand before him. He propped an arm up and watched Shen Zequin contemplate it over. "Let Fei Shen take a look at the Biancha ponies here first," Shen Zequin said. "Use the riding stables Achi left here." "That's my riding track." Xiao Qiye pinched Shen Zequin's chin and pulled it close. "When will you give Shen Lanzhou to me?" Under the force of the grip pinching him, Shen Zequin remembered Xiao Qiye's iron fingers from that day, as well as the hard, solid sense of touch of those iron fingers caressing his nape. His breathing hitched slightly. He wanted to avert his gaze, but Xiao Qiye was holding him in place. It was hot inside the room, and tiny beads of sweat began to materialize on the temples of the prefectural lord who had just soaked in a bath. Staring at Shen Zequin, Xiao Qiye leaned closer and said, "You got all excited when I touched you that day, didn't you, your lordship?" End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 216, Damp Night. The title of your lordship for the prefectural lord was used by all, and for this reason, these two words became even more ambiguous coming from Xiao Qiye. It was like they were hiding clandestine meaning within that was in plain sight of the crowd, hinting at a certain kind of unmentionable pleasure and intimacy. Desire was the rising surge of tidal waves, spreading and flowing to the parts where they touched, exuding a thin layer of sweat. During the day, the prefectural lord sat high above the rest and gazed down at the group of outstanding men. His folding fan obscured the rest of his emotions, giving rise to a cold indifference in his eyes, a sharpness that could, with a single glance, send alarm bells ringing in warning of danger. But right now, his mouth was slightly parted as he bit down on Xiao Qiye's finger. That soft tongue, that overflowing saliva, and that expression of a shame he was silently enduring. They all carried with them a come-hither undertone. Xiao Qiye desired him. He not only desired his fair neck, but also his wet, slippery tongue. His calloused finger rubbed against Shen Zequin's gums, and given that Shen Zequin had just drank hot tea, the lining inside his mouth was sensitive. His eyes were now wet with tears, and he had gone so incoherent from the storm Xiao Qiye was stirring up in his mouth that he could not answer Xiao Qiye. Secreted fluid spilled as the tip of Shen Zequin's tongue probed along the pulp of Xiao Qiye's fingers. They faced the wall, with Shen Zequin leaning forward while being pinned by Xiao Qiye's chest on his back. This position made Shen Zequin feel as though every thrust went in deep to the hilt. He braced himself against the wall, resting his forehead against it as his tears fell in never-ending torrents. And when he lowered his head, he exposed his nape that Xiao Qiye once again bit. The robe beneath crumpled into a ball. Shen Zequin could not respond with Xiao Qiye sitting on their heels like this. The initiative to take the lead was all in Xiao Qiye's hands. The tip of Xiao Qiye's nose nuzzled imperceptibly along Shen Zequin's nape, seeming like both a demand and a coercion. His dangerous gaze lingered on Shen Zequin's side profile, where he saw the seductive temptation hidden in the upturned corners of Shen Zequin's eyes. Shen Zequin did not know what trouble the corners of his eyes were courting. He was so very innocent, so much that even his grunts on being bitten were exceedingly soft. But Xiao Qiye was so savage that he turned Shen Zequin's entire person into a small boat adrift amidst the great billowing waves. Turbulent waves crashed over him, not permitting him to even struggle under the intricately woven sound of water permeating the room. Seeing the intermittent drops of Shen Zequin's falling tears, Xiao Qiye turned his head aside to drop a kiss on the corner of his eye. Shen Zequin sobbed in that kiss and accidentally smeared his robe wet. He turned his gaze towards Xiao Qiye, his voice trembling, "It's all HNGH, your fault." Xiao Qiye bit down on the tip of Shen Zequin's ear and whispered, "Oh, so you're blaming me now, huh?" This thrust went so unimaginably deep that it left Shen Zequin too breathless to even grunt out loud. Shenzhen was all drenched in sweat after taking Xiao Qiye in several times, and his robe remained soaked even after a ring. Xiao Qiye pinned him against the rug and made to kiss him. Too exhausted to tilt his head up, Shenzhen stuck out his tongue lazily. Xiao Qiye engulfed that tongue in his mouth and remained in this way, pressing down against Shenzhen. The rug in this room was unlike the one at home, it was not as soft. Instead, it resembled a little brush with fine bristles. Xiao Qiye tore off Shenzhen's robe that had long been soaked through, and the friction of the entire bare front of Shenzhen's body against the rug proved too much for him to bear. No, Shenzhen strained to plead for mercy in between his sobs, Xiao I can't. Pinning him down, Xiao Qiye took that soft tongue back into his mouth again so that all Shenzhen could do was cry. How could Shenzhen withstand an onslaught like this? That chafing of his front was making his waist and legs weak, and it was also so brutal back there. He was entirely consumed by Xiao Qiye in between his ragged, hectic breathing, so much that he was incoherent. His face flushed red and he cut a sorry sight as he vaguely muttered, turn over, see Ian. Hush. Xiao Qiye stretched out his arms to hold down Shenzhen's sliding arms. His entire chest pinned him down, making all of him sink into the fine fur of the rug. My wife's about to return. Why was he still harping on about this? With his cheek partially buried, Shenzhen cried in a small voice, why you, mn. Xiao Qiye pressed the tip of his nose against Shenzhen's soaked temple, his breaths lingering in his ear. The candlelight in the room had long gone out. Light reflecting off the snow penetrated through the window paper, glowing brighter than usual. This exceedingly pure radiance spoke not of gentleness as it incited the beast inside the room, allowing Xiao Qiye to see even more clearly how Shenzhen was a jade that could not be concealed. A branch outside the window pressed low by the snow hung horizontally from the side. Occasionally, birds would come disturbing it, sending the branch swaying and the snow rustling off. But no matter how hard they tried, they received no attention from the men in the room. Subsequently, the branch turned bare, appearing all the more lonesome. Shenzhen rubbed against the rug until it was all soaked, and the rug chafed against Shenzhen until he was very nearly wet. Xiao Qiye was almost on the cusp of orgasm as he grasped Shenzhen's hand and bid him. Veiled words, dim light, dampness, and the intensity of love-making. Xiao Qiye always had a way of making Shenzhen cry. With tears in his eyes, Shenzhen said vindictively, I'm going to tell your wife. Why you? Sure. Xiao Qiye let loose a muffled laugh. Tell him you get all excited upon seeing me. Shenzhen could not hold out any longer. Xiao Qiye was pounding him so hard it was making him tremble. Shenzhen clenched the rug with his fingertips, already nearing his climax. The arc of his neck seemed to be a concession of defeat, except that even his posture of surrender was so maddeningly titillating it drove Xiao Qiye crazy. Xiao Qiye scored a full victory tonight, as he always did, but he was never complacent, only content. This was a scene he would never tire of watching. The snow on the branch outside the window rustled off again. Shenzhen could indistinctly hear a few cries of a night crow. The crow flew away, and Shenzhen turned into snow. The heat in the room melted him into water, leaving him too preoccupied to even breathe. There was so much he remembered in his mind, but every time it came to this moment, all that was left in there was Xiao Qiye. Xiao Qiye, ah yeah. Xiao Qiye grasped Shenzhen by the cheeks and kissed him, and Shenzhen came so much until he was completely spent. And forgot about finishing his words from before. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The next few days were all sunny days. Spring hung in the air in Zhongbo as the third month approached. The snow had not only melted in Tse province but also a bit in Duan province. Gujin and Wuziu cleared out the roads and reported the public ditches that ought to be repaired at the first opportunity. As Shenzhen could not return to Tse province for the time being, Yao Wenyu could only come over to Duan province. His mobility was limited and his health was poor, so the horse carriage moved slowly on the way over. Kongling and Yu Xiaozhe waited for him in Dun province, after which all three of them arrived together in Duan province. Fei Sheng received them outside. He sent the gentleman in first, then followed Qiao Tianya to do an inventory count of the supplies that they brought along. When he came to the front, he saw Huo Lingyun, so he whispered to Qiao Tianya, "Why did you bring him, too?" The weather was neither cold nor hot today, so the roads were cleared quickly, and there was no mud to be stepped on when they stepped outdoors. Fei Sheng was initially in a good mood, but all that was left was impatience when he saw Huo Lingyun. There were many people unloading the cargoes around them, and with that many eyes around, Fei Sheng had no wish to fall out with Qiao Tianya over Huo Lingyun. If this made its way to his master's ears, then his loss would far outweigh his gains. Thus, he endured it and followed behind Qiao Tianya, hoping to seek clarification on the matter. Once he hangs up his authority token, he's a legitimately conscripted Jin Yue. Qiao Tianya jumped onto the horse carriage in a few steps. Should I not have brought him here? Sunlight shone down upon them. Fei Sheng rubbed his slightly icy cold hands, feeling irritable. His gaze on Huo Lingyun was too blunt and undisguised. Qiao Tianya looked over too. On the other side, Huo Lingyun sensed their gaze and turned his head over to meet their eyes, in particular Fei Sheng's. This man spells danger if placed close at hand. Fei Sheng shifted his gaze away without a smile on his face. He had no wish to pay Huo Lingyun any attention. Duan province is not like Xe province. Who's going to take responsibility for it if something goes wrong? I will. Qiao Tianya squatted down and fished out his pipe. As he struck up the fire, he cast a glance at Fei Sheng and said with well intentions, "Don't be too smart for your own good and play mind games with master." Qiao Tianya was already making it very clear with his words. Fei Sheng was none too pleased on hearing it. Ever since he joined us, I've never caused any trouble for him. So why get all so aggressive? What are you angry about? Qiao Tianya puffed on his pipe and paid no mind to Fei Sheng's tone. He understood Fei Sheng. I'm simply telling it as it is. By leaving him idle on the sidelines, are you waiting for master to use him instead? When the time comes, he will no longer be under your charge. Shen Zequan retained Huo Lingyun and did not kill him because he wanted to use him. If Fei Sheng were to keep Huo Lingyun idle like this now that the latter had been set before him, then like Qiao Tianya said, once Shen Zequan grew impatient, Huo Lingyun would no longer be under Fei Sheng's charge. When that happened, it would be humiliating for Fei Sheng. Fei Sheng cast another glance at Huo Lingyun and let Qiao Tianya's words sink in. But those words were adding fuel to the flames in his heart, making him even more displeased. He held back his resentment, having no outlet to vent it. He still wanted his dignity before Qiao Tianya, and he was unwilling to lower and demean himself too much. He and Qiao Tianya both served in the Jin Yue, and he understood all that Qiao Tianya had said. He just could not stand it anymore. Your origins are formally traced back to Chu capital. Qiao Tianya weighed up his pipe in his hand. Feeling that it had to be said, he continued to persuade him. He is not trained for this at all. His bond with master is not the same, and neither is his bond with the Jin Yue. So, what the hell are you scared of? You can one-up him with just this mouth of yours alone. You're disparaging me with this. Fei Sheng retracted his gaze and thought for a moment before speaking the truth. This person is both scheming and capable. As long as he remains, it's only a matter of time before he comes out on top. Shen Zequan now wanted to remain in Duan province to establish a light cavalry. That was not a job that could be secured with just a glib mouth. Fei Sheng initially thought he would definitely be the one in charge on this end, but he never expected Shen Zequan to directly transfer Yao Wenyu over, along with Qiao Tianya in tow. Fei Sheng did not dare to delve too deeply into it. He knew what was good for him. This was his strong point. You are capable too, Qiao Tianya said. But keep dwelling on this matter, and you will only be holding your own self back. Is there anything that can escape Master's eyes? What's meant to be yours will eventually be yours. Fei Sheng did not want to talk about this matter in detail with Qiao Tianya. They were not birds of the same feather that flock together, and he did not count on Qiao Tianya to stand with him against a common adversary either. He frowned as he looked at the pipe in Qiao Tianya's hand. Waving away the smoke drifting before him as he asked, perplexed, "Why have you started smoking again?" "Nothing to do." Qiao Tianya put it out but did not continue with his explanation. He appeared to be somewhat taciturn, unlike before. After rising to his feet, he did not engage in further conversation on the topic and merely watched carefully as the others unloaded the goods. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Shenzhequan held his folding fan upside down and tapped it gently on the table. He had just changed to a new earring. An agate earring that accentuated the fairness of his complexion. It was so conspicuous that the others dared not keep looking at it. "I've transcribed a copy of Luo Mu's account book." Yu Xiaozhe presented the book to Shenzhequan. "Your lordship, please look it over." There was a withered tree branch in a vase on the table. Ding Tao was the one who picked it up and brought it back to put in the vase. Yu Xiaozhe did not know that and originally thought of saying a few words of praise, but he was afraid of barking up the wrong tree and finding himself in a predicament he could not get out of. Shenzhequan nodded for Yu Xiaozhe to sit, so Yu Xiaozhe took his seat again and calmly concentrated without another glance at that withered branch. Unaware of this, Shenzhequan looked over the account and said, "The spring plowing is just around the corner. Pick someone to go over and assist Luo Mu in his official duties. He's only one man after all, and it's tough on him to be running around on both ends." What he meant was that they could no longer allow Luo Mu to have a monopoly on power in Xia province this year. They had to send someone over to keep him in check. And Kong Ling was the one who knew best what kind of man Luo Mu was. "I do have a candidate in mind," Kong Ling said from the side. "I went down to Deng province on your lordship's orders this time and encountered an old acquaintance of the second master there." "An old acquaintance of Cian." Shenzhequan closed the account and thought for a moment, but no one came to mind. What old acquaintance would Xiao Qiye have in Deng province? He was rarely in Zongbo. Seeing as Shenzhequan did not remember, Kong Ling reminded him. "Wang Xian. Does your lordship still remember this person? He was originally the secretary of the Ministry of Revenue in Chu capital, who managed the imperial army's expenditure during the 8th year of the Xian era. He had several encounters with second master." It was only then Shenzhequan remembered. Come to think of it, this Wang Xian was initially on bad terms with Xiao Qiye, and he had handled the silk from Quan City matter, too. During the assassination case, he was framed by Xiang Yun for bribing Xiao Qiye, and as a result, he was demoted and relegated. Before leaving the capital, Xiao Qiye went to the Ministry of Revenue to pull a few strings so that Wang Xian did not completely lose his official position and was merely sent to Zongbo to handle affairs. Even Xiao Qiye himself had forgotten all about this matter, much less Shenzhequan. Not long after Wang Xian arrived in Deng province, the bandits took them by storm, and he fled the Yamen by feigning madness, only to be stranded in Deng province along with the refugees. It was not until Kong Ling went to inspect the Yamen after Yang Qiu's death that Wang Xian could come to the front and make a fresh start again. Going by second master's intent, this person was originally meant to come over to Archse province, but shortly afterwards, something came up, Kong Ling said tactfully, so the Ministry of Revenue changed his posting and sent him down to Deng province. He suffered a lot in Deng province. The kindness that your lordship and second master showed him was still on his mind when he saw me. Shenzhequan thought about it carefully for a moment. Since he's willing, assign him to Xia province. His original position was that of a Ministry of Revenue official, so he should be familiar with assisting on taxation matters in Xia province. Shenzhequan could not trust Luo Mu, so this was just perfect. By putting a Wang Xian who was proficient in taxes in Cha province, he would be able to bring Luo Mu's account books under strict control. What really mattered most in Cha province at present was money. As long as he had the money in his grasp, Luo Mu would not be able to rebel. It was still early, so after settling this matter, Shen Zequan set aside the miscellaneous affairs of the three prefectures and asked Yao Wenyu, "How is Yuan Zhou doing these days?" Yao Wenyu, whose knees were covered with a woolen blanket, answered upon hearing him, thanking his lordship for his concern, "It's nothing serious. Although there is a bridle path from Tse province to Duan province, it's still a long distance away. I was worried you would catch a cold on the way, but seeing as you're fine, I can now put my mind at ease." Yao Wenyu waited for Shen Zequan to finish with the pleasantries before he said, "I brought a message from Tse province for your lordship." After a moment's pause, he continued, "There's a rumor in Dan province a few days ago saying that Pan Lin and Pan Yi had been dismissed from their posts pending prosecution and have been handed over to the Court of Judicial Review and the Ministry of Justice to await trial." Shen Zequan's eyes swiveled to Yao Wenyu. "So soon?" Three members of the Pan clan of Dan City, Pan Xiongja, Pan Lin, and Pan Yi, were all significant ministers of the imperial court. What's more, they were connected to the Fei clan of Chuan City through a marriage alliance. They carried a lot of weight amongst the remaining noble clans at present. If the Empress Dowager still wanted to monopolize state power, then she could not do without the Pan clan's valuable assistance. For this reason, Pan Lin's dismissal was the Empress Dowager's loss. As soon as Liang Qiushan and Xue Xiaozuo arrived at Dan City, they immediately set about auditing the field's accounts, Yao Wenyu said. They did not ask for Pan Yi to submit the original accounts but assigned someone down directly to measure the lands personally. Pan Yi initially thought that with Pan Xiongja and the Marquis of Helian as guarantors, and with the assistance of Liang Qiushan whom Pan Lin had assigned to act as an intermediary, they would be able to fool their way through the audits of the accounts this time, or at the very least, hang in there until spring was over, but who could have expected Liang Qiushan to come over for the deliberate purpose of checking the accounts? In the meantime, there was a memorial impeaching Xue Xiaozuo with the demand to check the Quan City accounts, but Kong Qiu overruled it. Kong Ling said. Shen Zequan's folding fan paused on the table. His brows slowly furrowed into a frown. It has not even been a year yet since the storm that the Imperial Academy stirred up last year. Kong Qiu and Sen Yu were both successively denounced in writing then, and they were at daggers drawn with Xue Xiaozuo, so why did they so quickly? The tax circuit intendant of Juexi has also been imprisoned, with the accounts of Chuan City being implicated as well. There is talk that something is off with the tariffs. He is now being impeached by the Chief Surveillance Bureau. Even the city is feeling the repercussions. Yao Wenyu, having been born of a noble clan, was far more perceptive to the thread of clue than others. He continued, the tax circuit intendant of Juexi, by all reasonings, has nothing to do with Chuan City, but the Chief Surveillance Bureau impeached them together. The Marquis of Helian of Chuan City has close relationship to the Hua clan, Shen Zequan said. But he apparently doesn't concern himself with the Chuan City accounts. Sen Yu's impeachment of him now means that he has a handle against the Marquis of Helian in his hands. He caressed the edge of the fan with the pad of his fingers and thought it over. There's something suspicious about this matter. Where's Yan Hiru? Call him over. There must be a reason Kong Qiu was willing to bury the hatchet with Xue Xiaozuo. Shen Zequan's eyes were blocked off outside the city of Chu capital, but he had to be cognizant of what Chu capital was doing at all times. If Pan Lin was really taken down because of this, then it would not only mean that the noble clans had suffered a setback, but it also meant that the Empress Dowager was now all on her own in the struggle for power in Chu capital. As soon as Yan Hiru's butt touched the bench, he started to ramble, "Oh man, these days have been stifling the life out of me. Your lordship, if you hadn't called for me, that Wu Zia wouldn't have let me go out. Kedong's military provisions have yet to be fully delivered. I was so anxious that my temper rose. This Duan province is so run down, can I have a cushion or not? This seat's killing my ass. Yan Hiru's voice gradually trailed off under Shen Zequin's gaze. He shifted his body. Bribery, of course, Yan Hiru said in a small voice. What other handle would the Marquis of Helion have on this? He's a marquis with a sinecure that has practically no obligations. For the sake of his son's future, he runs all over and usually likes to gift others a little something. That Liang Qiushan is going over to Dan City, isn't he? The Marquis of Helion must have had his head slammed by a door to ask the tax circuit intendant of Juexi to deliver a bag of gold to Liang Qiushan. Isn't that just playing into the hands of others? I told you Liang Qiushan is not an easy man to mess with. He's cut from the same cloth as Zhang Qingshan. See what happens now? This one bag of gold from the Marquis of Helion screwed over an entire bunch of people. Bribery. Yao Wenyu suddenly piped up and looked at Shen Zequin. Pan Lin's willingness to assign Liang Qiushan means that he sees Liang Qiushan as his trusted aide. Why would the Marquis of Helion make the redundant move of sending him gold? He's foolish, I guess. Tapping the teacup lid, Yan Hiru recalled how Fei Sheng had pressed down his head. Still bearing a grudge, he said, the Fei clan are all fools. They aren't all that bright. That young master Fei Shi is already of age, yet he's still a loafer. Is their household even capable of being up to any task? For what it's worth, the Marquis of Helion is on the Empress Dowager's side, and he did not even die when Hua Saiqian fell from power. The light in Shen Zequin's eyes dimmed slightly. Even if he wants to have Liang Qiushan in his grasp, he shouldn't have sent him gold. He even turned it over to the tax circuit intendant of Juexi. He is simply delivering himself like a gift to Liang Qiushan. What is he trying to achieve? Who knows? Yan Hiru suddenly hit upon a thought and straightened up in his seat, then he leaned over the table, showing Shen Zequin an astonished expression. If this was not done by the Marquis of Helion himself, then he's really too tragic. This simply allows Xue Zaiozhuo to deal a direct stab to his clan and drag the entire Pan clan down into hot water at the same time. In a flash, Shen Zequin connected the dots. The folding fan smacked down on the tabletop with a thud, startling Yan Hiru so much that a shiver ran through his body. Yao Wenyu suddenly broke out in a coughing fit. He covered his mouth, clutching the handkerchief. With his back slightly arched over, he recovered and continued, what a brilliant scheme. Shui Yanking, well played. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 217, Hui. It was sleeting heavily in Chu capital that day, with a chill that cut deep. The Marquis of Helion had been kneeling in the hall until his legs had gone numb and his sleeves were soaked through with his tears. That Shui Yanking is so shameless and unscrupulous he would stop at nothing to frame me. How is it possible for the tax circuit intendant of Juexi's act of bribery to implicate our Chuan city? That's Zhang Qingshan's territory, so if one were to dig to the bottom of it, it's Zhang Qingshan who is the instigator. The official hat that the Marquis of Helion had taken off was resting by his knees. He cried, and then there's that Sensunyi who keeps incriminating me relentlessly. He's clearly colluding with Shui Yanking to set up a trap and dispose of those who stand against him. They shamelessly engage in shady deals for personal gains, yet Kongbaran still wants to tolerate and abet them. It's the imperial court's ethos that they are ruining. Stop trying to fool me with such words. The Empress Dowager was in a towering rage. If you had behaved yourself, would Xue Zaiozhuo have been able to track down the issue with the accounts? The tax circuit intendant of Juexi has been engaging in his fair share of corruption in the Chuan city. If you had not backed him in this, would he have the capability to do so? It was brightly lit inside the hall. All the palace maids and eunuchs had retreated outside the doors, leaving only Madame Liu Xiang kneeling in attendance at the side. The Marquis of Helion, having come to apologize, was flimsily dressed and was now trembling with fear and trepidation under the wrath of the Empress Dowager. After the death of Emperor Tianchen, the Empress Dowager has been covering up for the noble clan's failings from this position of hers, and she was already bone-weary having done so all this time to such an extent. She sighed in disappointment across the beaded curtain at the Marquis of Helion. Sensing that things were not boding well upon hearing her sigh, the Marquis of Helion hurriedly shuffled forward on his knees and said, "Your Majesty, please be appeased. The wise strategy now would be to sacrifice the pawn to save the rook. No matter what, we have to first preserve Pan Linear." Pan Lin was Pan Xiongji's legitimate son and a key official of the Ministry of Revenue. They lost Wei Huigo last year, and now they only had Pan Lin who could still get a foothold in the Ministry of Revenue. If they were to lose Pan Lin at this point, then the noble clan would be without a money keeper. The Empress Dowager said, "Even if we can save Pan Lin's neck, we can't save Pan Yi." Pan Yi was the husband of the commandery Princess Zheyu. Without Pan Yi, Zheyu would be widowed. Momentarily grieved, the Marquis of Helion bent over the ground and choked with sobs. Wiping his tears, he said, "As a father, how would I cast aside such a fine son-in-law had I not been forced into such a desperate situation? I have no other choice. I would rather have her widowed than have her get implicated in this." The Empress Dowager's face behind the beaded curtain was haggard. Eventually, she merely said, "Go back and have Zheyu and Pan Yi mutually agree to a divorce." ******. Sleet outside the palace drummed against the palace eaves, blanketing the top of the vermilion walls with white snow, while the mournful wails of the ancient watchtower bell pushed their way into the joint hearing hall. Pan Lin was an official of rank, so he did not have to kneel and pay his obeisances to the various presiding judges in the hall. After the reign of Yanji, Dan City no longer received rewards of fields, but the land surveillance conducted by the Ministry of Revenue threw up a wholly different total amount of land than was reported by Dan City. Shueziaozuo sat upright and looked at Pan Lin. As the prefectural prefect of Dan City, Pan Yi concealed the additional fields from the Ministry of Revenue instead of reporting it. Meanwhile, you have the important duty of presiding over taxation matters in the Ministry of Revenue, and you have never voiced any doubts about the field taxes discrepancies in the audits all these years. Let me ask you, were you aware that Dan City was forging accounts for its field taxes? Pan Lin had been locked up for a few days, and his official robe was wrinkled as he sat across the table and looked at Shueziaozuo without answering. Shueziaozuo faced off against Pan Lin in confrontation. Pan Lin was not an easy man to put on trial. These kinds of top-rank imperial court officials were all familiar with the investigation process. The smart ones would maintain their silence when interrogated and cross-examined by the Court of Judicial Review and Ministry of Justice. This was because the presiding officials were all proficient in the art of probing, and it was too easy to trip up and give them evidence against oneself when contending with them. Pan Lin was obviously a smart man, as he held his silence in response throughout Shueziaozuo's questionings. If the case were to get stuck at an impasse here without any headway made, then the remaining 7 cities would have sufficient time to clean up their accounts and get rid of the evidence of their sordid deeds before Shueziaozuo focused the investigation on them. Shueziaozuo had lied low in wait for many years before he managed to get this opportunity. He could not let Pan Lin get away with it at this point. Pan Xiongji's original position remains untouched. Shueziaozuo laced his fingers. Her Majesty commended him for being a minister of significance who assists in the governance of the state. He is expected to be transferred out of the Ministry of Works after the imperial examination was held in spring. This is a hint that he will be promoted to the Grand Secretariat. Get yourself locked in a stalemate with me here, and his appraisal after spring is bound to get affected. Pan Lin leaned over and gave a contemptuous spat. You manipulated the tax circuit intendant into carrying out bribes and made use of the chance to build a bridge to Kongqiu of the Grand Secretariat. You want to take down our Pan clan only because I let Yao Yuanzhou go. You're but one twisted illegitimate son born of a concubine, so what's with this capable pillar of the state act? Shueziaozuo's expression remained unchanged as he said, before Pan Xiongji took up the post of Minister of Works, your Pan clan was already appropriating the common folks' fields in Dan City. During the reign of Yanji, Chao Chong, a commoner of Dan City, entered the capital to lodge a complaint of injustice, but he was trampled to death by Hua Shizhen's horse on Jinwu Street, and his father, who was already in his 80s, killed himself by banging his head at the entrance of the Yamen of Dan City. You are right. I'm indeed taking down your Pan clan because of Yao Wenyu, but Yao Wenyu was merely an opportunity you handed me. Even without Yao Wenyu, the Pan clan still has to pay their dues. Pan Lin's limbs were icy cold. He leaned back in his chair and avoided Xue Xiaozuo's gaze. During the reign of Xiand, Secretariat Elder Hai received orders from the emperor to audit the field taxes in Dan City. The official assigned was a man named Zhang Jun, a fellow official of mine in my position as the chief supervising secretary of the Ministry of Revenue. There were already signs of issues with the field taxes of Dan City at that time, but Zhang Jun fell off his horse and died on his way back to the capital to submit his report, and the account book he had on him vanished without a trace. Xue Xiaozuo said calmly. In the second year of the Xiand era, when the Secretariat Elder continued digging into the accounts, Hua Saiqian thought we had evidence in our hands, and so he ordered the noble clans to make up for the deficit in taxes. You people were unwilling to cough up the money from your own private coffers, so you intensified efforts to encroach on even more land in the 8 cities in order to make up for that amount. In that year, 7 households in the Dan city successively consumed poison to commit suicide. You know why, right? Of course, Pan Lin knew why. That year, Hua Saiqian was pushed into such a corner that even Pan Xiongji grew anxious too. Thus, at the same time he appropriated even more of the commoners' fields, he had the original fields taxes split up between the commoners in the city. These common folks had lost their fields that could feed them, and they were still burdened with hefty amounts of taxes to pay. Unable to have this gross injustice redressed, they could only seek death. This was not exclusive to Dan City. It was a common scene in the 8 cities after the reign of Xiand. There was no longer anyone else left in the hall by the time Xue Xiaozuo spoke to this point. He continued, later on, Juexi was hit with a disaster, and Zhang Qingshan. Do you know why Zhang Qingshan refused to wallow in the mire with Hua Saiqian at that time? Because Zhang Jun was his brother from the same clan. There's karmic retribution in this world. Pan Lin's throat tightened and he forced a laugh. Then aren't you afraid of retribution by framing the innocent now? Innocent? Is the tax circuit intendant of Juexi innocent? He was able to take up the post of tax circuit intendant because you people vouched for him. Then the Ministry of Revenue gave him a favorable appraisal and had him placed in Juexi as a counterbalance to Zhang Qingshan. Using this position, he had dealings with the Yan clan of He province, reselling copper and steel in the territory on behalf of the 2 cities of Chuan City and Di City. The tariffs he obtained from embezzlement and corruption are enough to rebuild this office compound. Xue Xiaozuo rose to his feet. His official robe appeared dark in the hall. He continued, if the tax circuit intendant had no connections whatsoever to the Marquis of Helion, how would he have heeded the hint and hurried over to make a heavy bribe? You people called this a frame-up, but this is merely a scheme all of you habitually used in the past. I'm just following your example. Pan Lin gulped. Anxiety started to burn in him. You go to great lengths and efforts in an attempt to support the heir apparent ascend to the throne, but I fear it will all be for naught in the end, much like trying to draw water with a bamboo basket. The heir apparent to the throne is called Li Jianting, not Li Jianheng. Xue Xiaozuo braced himself against the edge of the table and looked down at Pan Lin. All of a sudden, he asked, do you know about the scorpions? The expression in Pan Lin's eyes was blank. He maintained his silence to refuse to fall into Xue Xiaozuo's trap again. Zongbo's troops suffered a military defeat in the 4th year of the Xiand era, giving Hua Saiqian a chance to catch his breath. Whether it was Shen Wei's evasion of the battle or the Biancha's invasion, heaven seems to be helping the noble clan escape a calamity, Shui Xiaozuo said. But you know what? I don't believe that. Pan Lin had no idea what Shui Xiaozuo was talking about at all, but he smelled danger. He could remain tight-lipped and evade the topic on the appropriation of the commoners' fields, but he could not just breeze past the subject when it came to colluding with the foreign foes. This kind of matter would be a catastrophe leading to their ruin once it reared its ugly head. Are you trying to frame me again? Pan Lin snapped. You ingratiate yourself with the heir apparent for power and position, yet you get rid of those who challenge you in the imperial court and bend the law to suit your own purposes. If you truly have the state's interest at heart, then why do you have to force Lu Guangbai to turn against the state? Who exactly was it that tampered with the Bianjun Commandery's military grains? Shui Xiaozuo abruptly flung away the confession statement in his hand. And who was it who misappropriated and embezzled nearly half of Qidong's military salaries and provisions? You people repeatedly suppressed Qizuyan and let the military power of a single clan in Libei grow so unchecked that their 120,000 armored cavalry soldiers overran the northeast. Without Xiao Qiye, who would have been able to tether Xiao Fangxiu and Xiao Jiming and keep a hold on them? Why don't you ask yourself how the Secretariat Elder has been trying to remedy all of your transgressions all these years? The Empress Dowager holds sway over the imperial court and the common people, and yet even now, she is still unwilling to give up the noble clans to make up for the shortfall in Qidong's military funds. Shui Xiaozuo's chest heaved. He turned his head to calm down a little. I'm indeed getting rid of all those who stand against me. Shui Xiaozuo looked at Pan Lin once again. I want to weed out the dregs of society like you people at its roots, along with that scorpion. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Yao Wenyu, having suffered a cold from traveling a long distance, collapsed on the first night he arrived in Duan province. Seeing as Yuan Zhou was quick to fall ill but slow to heal, Shen Zequan had the physician remain on standby in the courtyard. Xiao Qiye was having his meal when he saw that Shen Zequan was about to go over, so he said, let's go together. I'll go pay him a visit, too. After their meals, both men draped on their overcoats. Fei Sheng followed far behind them, while Xiao Qiye held up the umbrella and walked with Shen Zequan to Yao Wenyu's courtyard. Shen Zequan saw it was empty under the eaves, so he asked the maidservant who came over to receive them, why aren't all of you inside waiting on him? The maidservant bowed in greetings and answered in a hushed tone, the mister doesn't want anyone to wait on him at night. Xiao Qiye held Shen Zequan's hand and motioned for the maidservant to take her leave. He shook the umbrella and said, Yuan Zhou is a man of pride. I don't see Qiao Tianya around. Shen Zequan looked around before his eyes stopped on the principal room. Let's knock. Both men were in the midst of talking when the door opened. Qiao Tianya was in his regular clothes. He bowed slightly in greetings to both of them and made way for them. Yuan Zhou. Mister has yet to retire to bed. He's waiting inside the room for your lordship and second master. Yao Wenyu was already up. His washed face was resting against the back of the chair. Hanu scratched away at the book on his knee until it fell to the ground. Xiao Qiye bent over to pick it up for him and took a look at it in passing. Oh, an atlas. There is a set in the study of your Plum Blossom residence. Second master had spent such a large sum of money that it's a pity to leave that residence in Chu capital. Yao Wenyu's voice was like the tinkling of jade. He had already schooled away his fatigue. Turning around his wheelchair, he motioned for Xiao Qiye to take a seat. Shen Zequan removed his overcoat and observed Yao Wenyu's complexion. You have been on the move for such a long distance. I shouldn't have summoned you to the hall today. With the snow melting of late, falling sick is inevitable and just a matter of time. There was no one else around, and Yao Wenyu could be considered to be long-time friends with Xiao Qiye, so he was naturally much more relaxed than usual. He poured tea for Shen Zequan, showing no sign of suffering from a chronic ailment in his movements. Your lordship must be still thinking about Chu capital right now. The spring plowing is just around the corner. Shenzhen pressed his index finger against the teacup. The agate gem on his ear swung under the dim light. If the Dan City case continues to be investigated, the remaining 7 cities will be affected too. This matter has a bearing on the granaries in Great Zhou. Sacrificing a pawn to save the rook is a habitual practice of the noble clans. If Shui Zhuo had truly pushed them into a corner, then their throwing away of a panlin, Xiao Qi rearranged the remaining chess pieces on the small table at the side, is not entirely impossible. Shui Zhuo killed 3 birds with 1 stone this time. He used gold to pull Liang Qiushan over to his camp, pushed Dan City's field taxes onto the agenda, and set the stage for future investigation into tariffs in Chuan City, Yao Wenyu said. What's so brilliant here is that such a thing had indeed gone down between the tax circuit intendant and the Marquis of Helion. The Empress Dowager would be hard-pressed to voice her woes. However, this must not be the only reason Kong Qiu was willing to lend him a helping hand. Seeing Hanu running over to the side of his foot, Shenzhen quietly shifted aside a little and looked at the cat as he said. Qi Zuyan's mobilization of troops against the Qingsha tribe was of pressing urgency. The Empress Dowager held back the Ministry of War in her refusal to give permission because she feared another investigation into the Ministry of Revenue's accounts. Had Shui Zhuo been willing to give the Grand Secretariat several millions of taels of silver at this juncture, Kong Qiu would naturally not turn it down. Hanu set its paws on Shenzhen's boots and stuck its butt up in the air as it stretched itself. It meow-meowed a few times and nuzzled itself against Shenzhen's calf. Just as it was about to paw at Shenzhen's robe, Xiao Qiye picked it up by the scruff of its neck. Xiao Qiye looked askance at it and said, "Oh right, I almost forgot. Shui Yanqing still has a lot of silver in his hands." Hanu turned around in the air. On seeing Xiao Qiye, it shrank its ears back, put up its front paws, and dared not move again. Xiao Qiye tossed it back, and it landed deftly on the ground. With its tail sticking up, it moved over to the side of the wheelchair and climbed back onto Yao Wenyu's lap for a petting. Yao Wenyu stroked Hanu and said, "Commander-in-Chief Qi is much obliged to Shui Zhuo for making up for the shortfall in military salaries and provisions this time. If the Empress Dowager keeps up with her wait-and-see attitude, she's going to lose her chance to make a preemptive strike. This matter is also an easy one to resolve." Shenzhen raised his eyes to look at both of them. The Empress Dowager only needs to arrange a marriage for Commander-in-Chief Qi, and Qidong's military powers can be split into 2. Marry Commander-in-Chief Qi, Xiao Qiye said. Even so, he has to have a noble title, and the few old men with noble ranks in Chu capital at present are all not suitable, nor can they hold her in check. Since the Marquis of Helion is already implicated in the Chuan City matter, might as well kick him out. Shenzhen took the chess piece in Xiao Qiye's hand and set it down on the chessboard. Young Master Fei Shi still doesn't have an official post, does he? Let him marry Commander-in-Chief Qi and go over to Qidong to play the role of a pretty vase. Military power that has been divided away to him can then be handed over to the Empress Dowager's charge. Moreover, Fei Shi and Pan Lin are bosom friends. With this layer of relationship, Pan Lin will have a chance to stage a comeback as long as he doesn't die. The Hua clan had been marrying off their daughters for nearly 100 years, and now, it was finally the Empress Dowager's turn to marry off boys. Just as Xiao Qiye had said, abandoning a pawn to protect the rook was a tactic that the Empress Dowager habitually used, only that the pawn she was going to cast aside was not just Pan Yi but also the Marquis of Helion. Shui Zhuo already had a handle against the Chuan City within his grasp, and Liang Qiushan had the accounts of Chuan City in his hand. Since it was Chuan City's accounts, then let Chuan City bear the responsibility for it. The Empress Dowager was at the mercy of others in the earlier half of her life. Being passive was not necessarily a desperate situation to her. Rather, she was already used to dealing out passive strikes. There was only one supreme ruler in the world. Since the heir apparent, Li Jianting, could be won, then why not Hua Huai? To date, the Li clan has, through the hands of the Empress Dowager, lost Emperor Guangcheng, Emperor Xiand, Emperor Tianchen, and the Crown Prince of the Eastern Palace during the reign of Yanji. Xiao Qiye looked at the white piece in his palm. If she loses again this time, Great Zhou will really change hands to a different master. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. With her cloak draped around her, Li Jianting stood in the sleet and faced the Empress Dowager from afar through the curtain of snow. The Empress Dowager looked at the young heir apparent and saw shadows of Emperor Guangcheng in Li Jianting's facial features. That was the husband who had held her in check for half her life, and also the shackle who had her trapped in the inner courtyard. Now that she stood at the pinnacle of supreme power, she no longer feared these eyes. The Empress Dowager smiled benevolently at Li Jianting while silently thinking. Vile spawn of incest. End chapter.